Hi, everybody. Welcome to Pockets Full of Soup, the storytelling show. I'm your host, Jared Petty, joined today by the producer slash seducer. Is it actually true? I don't know. Nick Scarpino.
I don't know if anyone knows.
Yeah.
Least of all me.
Are you seductive?
I used to be seductive, I'd like to think. And then I got married, and then that tool no longer needed to be in my tool case.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't need that anymore.
Oh, you don't think you need the power of seduction in a married relationship?
I think that no, definitely not. No, I think that I need the power of charm. I think I need the power of being a good guy, and I think I need the purchasing power that will allow me to get a handbag every once in a while and take my wife to a very nice hotel room in a very foreign country.
Oh, okay.
And
wow.
then and then that gets me affection.
Where is the last foreign country in which you made whoopee?
The last foreign country in which I made whoopee was Morocco.
Wow.
Yeah.
Goodness, that's like Rick and Elsa.
We had
that's Casablanca.
There you go.
Right
yes, it was.
There,
well, we didn't go to Casablanca. We actually ended up going to Fez and Marrakesh.
You're breaking my fantasy here, which
I
is
apologize.
you are Humphrey Bogart and
well, it was funny
or
because
are you Ingrid Bergman? I'm not sure.
I think in this which one was shorter? I think Humphrey Bogart was shorter, so I'm Humphrey. Right. My wife, unfortunately, or fortunately for her, is about an inch taller than I am. So that's the joke that never ceases to amaze her. But we had a great. Yeah, my wife is a world traveler, and she is one of those people who actually inspires me greatly. And I was not going to talk about her on this, but I think now I'm going to, because I used to hate traveling because traveling for me was synonymous with work. Mm-hmm. So you and I met at IGN. Obviously, I'd been there for quite a few years before you started.
Yeah.
And I used to take large amounts of equipment, shove them into planes, and then try to get them through customs in foreign countries, and then carry those and stuff them into cabs, and then get them to jobs all over the place, and do things like that.
You kind of make this sound like a smuggling endeavor.
It actually felt like a smuggling endeavor, and here's why. When you, I don't know if it's still the case, I haven't had to do this in a while, but when you have to get expensive equipment through customs, you have to sign and apply for apply for and have signed what's called a carnet form. And
I don't know anything about this. Yeah.
This carnet form is a document that is supposed to be universally upheld. And what it is you fill out all the information of all the equipment that you would take with you. For instance, when we're going to Japan or Germany, we used to take like computers and cameras and microphones and all these things that they want to make sure if you're importing into the country, you're not intending to sell.
Right. Things that you're just bringing along for work, you're going to take back out with you.
With you, right. Yeah. And so for obvious reasons that if you're going into like, I guess countries that don't have that equipment, or countries where that equipment is sold for more money, you're able to make a profit. And so you would go and you would have your list, and you would have to find the one custom stand that would accept that and has the stamp. So at SFO, the stand is underneath the escalators in the international terminal.
Okay.
That's fun. You learn that the hard way. If no one's there, you have to
go.
You
just can't find it? Like it's just hiding?
Well, everyone's like, what the hell are you talking about? And
it's like the cupboard
customs
under the
office,
stairs?
where is that? They're like, okay, yeah, it's Harry Potter. It's down underneath the escalator.
Okay.
And if you can't find someone there, you have to walk all the way to where people come out of the international terminal.
Okay.
And like wave someone down, and they think you're trying to run, and they're like, "What are you doing?" So you're like, "I need a customs official to come stamp this form for me," right?
Oh, that's fun.
So that's super fun because they speak English. Mm-hmm. Okay, imagine how fun it is when you go to like Germany.
Of course, you go to the other country. You don't speak German.
They don't speak German. Now, of course, I'm using it's Germany and Tokyo, or everyone speaks English there.
Actually, but, those are probably two of the easier.
Yeah, those are very easy. Yeah. But trying to explain to a very nice but stern German man that you need a carnet form filled out, and having him not know what the hell that is, and having to find the one person who knows where the stamp is, and then they randomly pick a piece of equipment out of the lineup, and they're like, "Show me this thing."
Okay.
And you're like,
time to dig through the 20 bags.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know where that thing is, and like I know I have it, and maybe I didn't pack that because I didn't write the list, and if I did, maybe I forgot it.
Fun.
So, and then by the way, if you forget to get it signed out of the country and signed back into the country, there's a hefty fine that goes with it.
Oh, so you can't miss anything.
No, you can't miss anything.
Wow.
And
this
so
sounds awful.
It's terrible. And some countries don't take it. So when you come back to the United States, they'll go, "How come you didn't get a stamp?" And you go, "Because they don't know what the hell this thing is." And the United States will be like, "Well, then you're probably gonna, you're gonna have some trouble with the card, like the customs, United States Customs Agency, when you have to, because at the end of the year you have to turn the form in, and they look through it, and it's a nightmare. I'm getting anxiety just talking about it right now.
This is amazing.
It's pretty terrible.
This is a tale of bureaucratic woe. The likes of which this is.
And the form is like, I think it's thousands of dollars just to get the form.
Is this the dark Orwellian world that we now live in?
I think it's just a someone somewhere said, people are going to export equipment. Mm-hmm. That equipment's probably going to be for professionals. It's going to be expensive. We ought to have some sort of system put in place for that. And they just forgot to call the rest of the world and ask them.
I think it's Stuff You Should Know. You ever listen to Stuff You Should Know?
Stuff You Should Know.
It's
Who does
it's
that
a podcast, and I believe NPR sponsors it.
Sure, okay. I've heard of it.
But Stuff You Should Know, they did an episode about customs that was really fascinating.
God, it's
Yeah, it's neat, and it talks about where all this came from, actually.
Okay,
but,
interesting.
But I never heard this particular nightmare.
Yeah.
I love the idea of somebody looking for the one stamp.
Oh my gosh, so my worst story with that was we were going to see Too Human. Do you remember that game?
Yeah.
Am I saying that title right? It was Too Human.
Not TWO human.
No.
Not TO human. Not the verb to human or the infinitive, nor the number to human,
Right.
but rather to TOO human.
That was the game, right?
To be too human. I at this point I don't even know anymore.
Crap.
I did, but I don't remember. But let's say whatever game you were going to see. Let's continue this.
I was going to see. It was and the studio was, I believe, based near Niagara Falls in Canada.
Okay.
The game ended up not doing well, unfortunately. But we, in order to go to Canada, in order to get to that specific part of Canada, had to fly to Buffalo, New York, and then drive.
Okay.
So we drove, of course, mapped to the nearest customs agent, like near border, like border
Who is
crossing,
we,
right?
by the way, in this case?
Me? Oh God, I forget who else
You
was
remember
with
who
me
was
on
with you?
that trip. No,
That's
I
okay.
don't.
Worry about it then.
But it was me and two other people in the small car that we'd rented because someone screwed up renting the car, so all the equipment was packed in. We looked like we just robbed a place, threw everything in the car, and just took off.
And you arrive at the Canadian border looking like you just robbed a bank.
It looks like this is going to be a very odd reference, but for anyone who's into anime, it looks like there's a movie called The Castle of Cagliostro that starts off with this actually iconic anime character named Lupin, who's like this master thief, and his right hand man stuffing giant things of money into the back of a car, and then as they take off, of course, there's a trail of money. That's kind of what we look like, but if that was equipment that was really expensive.
Oh, lovely.
Fran Mirabella doesn't know that I broke. So we get to this border patrol, this border crossing from I forget where we were at that point, but into Canada. And we're there for about 30, 40 minutes. It had taken us a few hours to drive there, plus the trip over because we're in San Francisco. So it was like all told, we're like 12 hours into this trip. And the guy's like, I hate to tell you this, but this is not where you can cross over. We don't have the stamp here. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, you have to go to the border crossing that's like 2 hours down the road, and then you have to get it stamped, but you won't be able to get to Niagara Falls there. You have to come all the way back here. So it was just the worst.
What is it with these stamps?
It was they have to have.
Well,
the official
I know
stamp.
that,
It's cool.
but I just I like to imagine that there's a stone, and if you're worthy, you can pull the stamp out.
Right.
Then you are the king of stamps and allowed to do this. I mean, stamps are fun. Do you like stamps?
I love stamps, of course.
Yeah, one of the
I like
things
anything physical.
when I taught school in Japan, stamp cards are a big deal there. Do you know about these?
Stamp cards, no.
Yeah, so you finish a class, and if the kid's been good, they have this little track, like counts 1 to 100, and you have little stamps, and you give them a number of stamps on the card, each space ahead, based on how well they did in the class, how well behaved they were. And when they hit 100, and they hit the end of their sheet, the card's filled up, and they get a prize. And this is something kids do there, kind of like the gold stars in our classes, but they use stamps, and they call them stamp cards. Very culturally relevant. You stamp your name. I have this cool stamp somewhere, a little bamboo stamp that was custom made for me by my boss, and it has my name in kanji on it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really kind of fun, and I enjoyed that. But stamps, you ever stamp anything?
No, I don't stamp that much. I do when I think of stamps, it's always synonymous for me with either the carnet form or the actual fun stamp, which is the lovely stamp you get when you go into and out of a country.
Oh,
and I love those stamps.
Yeah, the one you just
my wife has traveled a lot, and she just had to get a new passport, and it broke her heart because she couldn't use the one anymore that had her stamp from Vietnam and India and all over Europe.
Do you have to give it back when you're done? Or
no,
they
give it back to you, but I think they put a hole in it.
But you do get to keep the
it.
sheets.
Yeah,
That's
they send
good.
it back to you.
I wondered
Actually.
about that. So let me ask you this, Nick.
Sure.
First off, I am thrilled to have you on here. You're Nick from Kind of Funny.
Yes.
I imagine absolutely everybody here watching knows who you are and what you do. You ventured out to create this marvelous business with your friends, and you do wonderful things that make me happy. And
Thank you.
I watch you all the time.
That's very kind.
You're very kind for being on here. But of the Kind of Funny guys, I worked at IGN with you for a long time. But of the Kind of Funny guys, you are the one I know least well. We were talking about this before the show. I mean, you've always been the soul of gentility. And when I worked in the office, you were very much invested in the video.
You didn't work with me that closely, though.
Well,
there are quite a few
that's
people who think that I would be the opposite of that if they were to tell stories about me.
I never had to deal with that, though,
That's
because
fair.
when I started out, we were working completely opposite corners of the office. And right around the time I started to move into doing other things, around the time you left. So we never really got to work together much. we talked. You were going to teach me to use a camera at one point. Then you stepped away.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I can still show you how to use this one if you want, but I think you got it figured out.
No, well, this one it's hard not to do terribly with because I may be the worst cinematographer alive.
I think this shot looks great. I looked at it earlier and I love this effect.
It's like,
it's fun.
Is that why you're doing it?
Yeah, I like it. It's super cool.
But I'm really excited to have you.
Oh, of course.
But I'm excited to have you here because I know you less well than the other guys, and so I really don't know what you're going to say when I ask you our titular question.
Okay.
It's because pockets full of soup, often topical, but our go-to and the thing I'm going to ask you today to start. Tell me about somebody you're thankful for.
Okay. I was hoping that the titular question would be, "What's your favorite soup?" But
I
don't think I can answer that.
You don't know the soup story, right?
I don't know the soup story.
Okay, so the soup story it comes from again living in Japan, like all my stories. But one day it was freezing cold, just really really cold. And I was on my way to work, and
what part of Japan is this?
I was living on the center of the main island of Japan, Honshu, up in the mountains.
Okay.
I lived in a little town called Seki, which is up kind of on the slopes of the Japanese Alps. And
what an awesome experience!
It was incredible, just unreal. Yeah, just underneath Takayama, which is the secret best city in all of Japan. But I'm in Seki, which is my favorite place in the whole wide world, and it's freezing cold that day because it gets really cold in Japan. And Japanese vending machines many of them have cold sections and hot sections. You've gotten stuff.
I've experienced them. Yeah.
Well, Japanese vending machines, some of the hot sections have soup. They'll have tomato soup. They'll have corn soup in these little metal cans heated up. And I was so cold that I bought a bunch of cans of hot corn soup and stuffed them into my pockets and under my coat, and then walked to work through the town with this happy warm soup. And it kept me warm until I could get inside.
That's awesome.
And that night in my journal, I just wrote the phrase "pockets full of soup."
I love that.
In this little and that became the name of the show.
There you go.
That's where it's kind of.
That's better than any story I'm about to tell. You guys can just stop listening to this podcast.
Nonsense! You are full of the good stories. But who do you? Because you were talking about a couple of people, and I'm wondering who you're going to come down with.
Well, I'm going to talk about my wife. I've talked about her a little bit.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm thankful for her because she blessed me with her hand in marriage, which is good. She said yes, which I liked.
What if she had said no?
If she had said no, well, I can get to that. We can talk about that. So my wife and I have a great relationship, and I've talked about this a little bit on a few other podcasts. But it's not, our relationship was not without its drama and problems like everyone else's relationships are. Like you see these storybook marriages and things that always end in happiness. In the movies, and real life is just, it's not like that. My wife, I'm grateful for her because she's the first person and probably the only person in my life that's ever made me understand and want to be an adult.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I mean, by that I mean an adult man, not just an adult, but like I firmly believe when I met my wife, I was well, I don't want to say a child, but I was definitely a very immature 26-year-old who living in San Francisco, didn't respect a lot of things that I had to offer people and things that they had to offer me. It's a kind way of saying that.
Do you think that comprehension, that growing comprehension, is what you define as your change in maturity? What's the difference? What is the difference between that Nick and the Nick that coming to know your wife helped you become?
Well, I met my wife, and I was at the time. I would say the thing that a lot of guys say to women when they just want to keep being single, which is, I'm not ready to settle down. I'm not looking for a commitment right now. I'm just looking to have fun and enjoy someone's company. I.e., I just want to have sex with you, and I don't want the responsibility of having to form a relationship with you, potentially let you into my heart, my mind, and deal with anything that might be a consequence of that, which could be very long term, i.e., marriage, kids, the whole shebang. Right?
Were you thinking about it in that systematic of terms at that
Definitely,
point?
Yeah. Yeah, because especially when we're sort of taught as humans that there is a certain specific chain of events that your life is supposed to follow, right?
Okay.
You go to school, you go to high school. In high school, you go to college, you get a job. Right? If you go to college, great, but you're supposed to meet someone there, and if you don't meet someone there, you're supposed to meet someone very quickly after you get a job, the best job of your life, which is probably gonna be the job you're stuck in for a while, like everyone is, right? And if you're lucky and fortunate enough to meet someone, then you're supposed to marry that person, and then people start asking you when you have kids, you're gonna have kids with that person, and then you hit 30, and you're like, all of those milestones I've hit, what's next? And people go, I don't know. Maybe have another kid. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe start a business. Maybe.
I'm flashing a Fight Club right now. Do you remember
I think
the scene I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, I like a lot of people in the city revolted against the notion of like needing someone, right? I was like, I don't need someone to complete me. I don't ever want to get married because I feel like marriage is an archaic institute. A lot of those were just, I would later come to realize, excuses for me not wanting to move on in any way, shape, or form with my life. I just started working at IGN. I was like I think at that point I was 2 or 3 years in when I met my wife, and so things were going well. And I'm like, I'm good. I don't need like anything else. I'm just enjoying like finally feeling like I've got some sort of level of control in my life. I'm making more money than I've made before. I'm I have this great group of friends. I have this cool job that gets me to travel. And I'm like, I just want to I don't know. I just want to screw around.
Were you content?
Yeah, I think I was. I think I was content. And so that's why when my wife and I got together, or then girlfriend, obviously, we had met and I was like, this girl is a very interesting human being. She is, I shouldn't say girl, she was a woman at the time. This person is someone that challenges me on a lot of levels, and I don't like that. And so we met, we went out on a few dates. We had a great time together. We started getting to know each other, and right as I started getting feelings for her, I left for my second Japan trip to go to TGS.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, I'm going to TGS. I'm going to be gone. I lied to her. I was like, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks, and then, I'll give you a call when I get back. So I got back in TGS. Is not 2 weeks, by the way. The trip only lasts, I think, 6 days. I don't know why I said that. I think I was just getting too close to her, and I was like pushing it off.
About what year was this?
Yeah.
About when do you think
we've been married for 5 years, and we dated for quite a few years prior to that. So
you don't have to do the math. It's okay.
Yeah, it's too hard. That's probably about 8 or 9 years ago, maybe 9 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we might have bumped shoulders at that TGS then.
That's
what I was trying to figure out. Anyway, please continue.
So I came back from my trip, and I was like, I don't want to call that girl. And I didn't really have a good reason other than I knew it was going to lead to something. And I was like, I don't want it to lead to something right now. I want to be uninhibited.
Why did you know it was going to lead to something?
Because I liked her a lot.
You liked her a lot. Why did you like her? Who is this person?
She's very private. That's why I don't like to share a lot of her details,
uh-huh.
because she's not on Facebook. She's not on Twitter. She doesn't want to deal with any of the pros and cons of being on the internet and or having a presence other than the one that she likes to have IRL. So
good thing you decided to talk about her for an hour on a podcast.
Oh, I talk about her all the time, but I don't I specifics because I don't want to make her uncomfortable.
Let's stay away from the specifics then. But what was it, as much as you can define? What was it about this person that made? It sounds like your reaction was, I'm content, my life's good,
right?
But I'm also very afraid to call you because you were. Why? What was it about this person that made you worry that you wanted to be around them?
Because she was the first person that I had dated that was ready for that next step, and that's a very well, not at the time. I didn't realize, I didn't know that necessarily at the time. It wasn't inherently spoken like, hey, we're 3 weeks in our relationship, I think you might be the one. But it was hey, maybe you shouldn't have all your furniture from IKEA. Hey, maybe that couch that's on the street, leave it on the street. Maybe that doesn't need to come into your house.
Like, was she challenging you like a rom-com character?
No, I mean, no, not in that way. But I would see the way she lived her life, and I would be like, people can take vacations. Like, that's a thing people do. I don't do that. I would just be like, hey, I'm home. I don't have to move. Great, that's awesome.
Yeah.
She would be like, hey, what are your goals and aspirations in life? And I'd be like, I'm doing it. Like, I'm good. I'm making money.
Dream, man.
I have healthcare. That's great. It was super cool. And she was like,
nice.
Okay. But what really set me down the road with her was she has, for lack of a better term, just balls.
Okay.
She called me 2 weeks on the dot. No, it wasn't 2 weeks on the dot. It was a few days after I was supposedly supposed to have gotten back, which was, I think, a week after I had actually gotten back. And I remember this because I was at Craig Baradon's house. Do you know Craig?
Not well.
Okay. Well, Craig Baradon and I go way back. We're old friends. He used to work at IGN on the Insider and then on the video team. We just gotten done. I think we were watching a fight or something like that, or watching something. And I get this call from this number that I kind of recognize, but I don't. So I let it go to voicemail. And it's my wife, and she calls, and she says, hey, it's so-and-so. I think you're back from Tokyo. We had a really great time. You said you were going to call me, and I'm not. She was, she wasn't being mean about it. She was like, I had a great time with you. I'd love to see you again. And if you don't call me back, you're an idiot. And I was like, huh.
Well played,
I was like,
lady.
huh.
I don't know well. Well played indeed.
And I was like, all right. So I called her back and I was like, yeah, what's up? And she's like, yeah, you weren't gonna call me back, were you? I was like, no, I was not. And I'm like, why did I just answer that question honestly? Why are we being super honest with each other? What is happening here?
Why did she
so
say
I went over
it?
that
Have
night.
you ever asked her about it?
Yeah, oh yeah, we talk about it all the time.
Why did she
Because
say
she doesn't fuck around.
Well,
Am I allowed to swear on this? Sorry.
Oh, absolutely. Let me follow. Oh, yeah, that's very common. Don't worry about that at all. Say whatever you like. But let me take it. What did she see in you?
I think she saw someone that was more ambitious than he knew. I think she recognized talent that I had and something that I had that I didn't know necessarily I could bring out. Like, I thought I could bring out in myself, but I didn't know until I found someone else that I needed someone to help me bring that out.
Okay.
My wife is one of the people who was a huge inspiration in me starting Kind of Funny. She was one of the people. Yeah. When we ended up dating for a while, and then we ended up actually breaking up for a while. Mm-hmm. And she was one of the people she's been very much pivotal in me having a lot of self growth, and being honest with myself and saying there are deficiencies I have, not physically because I'm shorter than her, but mentally. There are, when you get to 25, 26, you've lived a lot of life at that point. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of experiences that have shaped you and conditioned you, and you don't realize how set in your ways you might be about something, right?
Some people say it's about 26 your brain stops growing.
There you go. Yeah. And that makes sense. So, we broke up, and I think it was because I had a lot of those. I know it's because I had a lot of those still issues left over of like wanting to be on my own and not necessarily seeing, the value of taking the leap with someone. And it wasn't until we broke up and we spent about 6 months apart that I realized, I realized how big a mistake that I had made. And we got back together very slowly and tentatively, and we worked very hard to really communicate with each other and talk to each other. And I realized that there were a lot of things in my life that I wanted to change. Didn't need to change, but I wanted to change because I didn't want to be. I had some older friends. I had seen some people who had sort of a consummate Peter Pan syndrome, and I didn't. I was like, it went from being fun and cool to, oh, shit, like, we're the last people at the party. I don't want to be the last person at the party. I want to go to the next party, whatever that's going to be.
Is that why you broke up?
We broke up because I thought the party was still fun. We got back together because it turns out the other party was more fun. I think I'm mixing my analogies here, or my metaphors. But so we got back together, and that was when we realized, what had happened, what kind of caused the breakup was that we went from this sort of very easy relationship where we were both getting very closer than we thought we were to her coming to the realization that I was the one, and that freaked me out. And so I ran. And then she was nice enough to give me another shot, which I will be repaying her for the rest of our lives. Not in a bad way. I just feel like I owe her.
So you walked away.
I walked away. She has balls. She was like, look, I'm not going to play this game. If you're not ready to at least conceive of us growing together and being together, then we're done.
Interesting.
And I was like, well, I'm not ready. And she's like, well, then we're done. And that was it. And some other stuff happened in between that was, hard. And then 6 months later, I get I don't think I've ever told anyone this. I get a note from her, handwritten. I won't go into the specifics of the note, but basically it was saying, you promised me that you would consider this whole situation.
When you stepped away?
Yeah, when I stepped away. You promised me that you would look in yourself and be honest with yourself and realize what was causing you to be so scared of this next portion of our lives. And you haven't done that yet. So I'm just letting you know, it's okay. I get it. You need to do what you need to do, but I'm going to now get over you. Like I'm going to try to get over you now.
Where were you when you got this note?
About 12 blocks away from her.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was living in Nob Hill. She was living in Pack Heights.
Is it your house?
This is my house. Yeah. So I just literally opened my mail. I was like,
there's a note.
And I know her handwriting, so I instantly saw that. I was like, oh man. And like when you're spending time away from someone that you're not over, but you think you're over, you don't realize it until you see that sign, that last little like vestige of her, and you're like, oh shit. And it was like a rock climber holding on by like one finger, and I'm like, I better put another fucking hand on this rock right now, or I'm gonna fall, and this is it. We're gonna be done.
What happened in that moment? I mean, you're reading these words,
I called
and suddenly you just grab.
I mean, I was like, I got it. The only thing I know to do, I was like, I'm gonna just Hail Mary it and call her and see what happens.
What happened inside you in that moment to make you go from "we are absolutely apart" to this. I want to make this work. What changed? Or did something change, or did you?
I think on a to speak on a more cowardly level, there was a being alone. I'm like this. I know this. This is obviously charted territory, but then all of a sudden I was confronted with another option, which was you can either take a risk, or you like and do something that may be great, or may not be great, but you have to face a fear here, or you can stay over here for the rest of your life and wonder what could have happened. And I don't quote a lot of people all the time, but there's a great quote that I always remember from Hunter S. Thompson where he was like, buy the ticket, take the ride. Like at a certain point, take the fucking ride and see what happens. And you have to do that and this has been thematic. Like that one moment in my life was like dealing with that fear, dealing with that anxiety, and having that person on the other end as the person that I knew would be there for me. And she picked up the phone, thankfully, has shaped a lot of my decisions and my ability to deal with that anxiety and that fear since. And because of her, I remember distinctly when we were talking, this flash 5 years after we get married, I'm thinking about changing my career in a very major way. I was actually thinking about just quitting IGN altogether. Not because IGN was bad, just because I'd been there for 10 years. Yeah. And I got to a place where I'm like, I feel like I'm taking up a person's chair who really wants to be here.
You felt ready to move on.
Really, yeah. And so, I was sitting on my bed one night with my wife, and we had talked about, kind of funny, this is after we launched that first Patreon, and I was like, look, I would obviously be making considerably less if I left right now, because I think that Patreon was only at, I think it was like $12,000. And there was 4 of us. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I mean, not so much that I wouldn't be able to like cover bills and stuff, but still after taxes and after a lot of things that would have been.
It sounds like a lot of money until you start living a life.
Right. Exactly. But I was like, look, I don't know what this is going to be, but I got to go try this for a second. And she said, do it. Like, why are you worried about it? Like, just try it. She's like, she has a job. And she was like, don't you want to try it? Like, don't you want to just do something? I hate to put it in these terms. There was a Topher Grace movie a while back that was set in the 80s, and I can't remember the name of it, but it had a great last scene where it was with him and his dad. And the whole character arc for Topher Grace was that he never did anything. He just kind of was like stagnant in life, right? And the movie wasn't that great. I think Dan Fogler was in it as well. Take Me Out Tonight was what it was called.
I didn't see that.
Not many people did, unfortunately. Not many people choose to willingly see Dan Fogler and Topher Grace movies, even though I love Dan Fogler and I love Topher Grace.
I like Topher Grace.
Are you familiar with Dan Fogler's work?
No.
He is from Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
No, I don't know his stuff.
He's also from the seminal picture Balls of Fury, starring Dan Fogler and one Christopher Walken and Maggie Q. So you should check that out if you're at all into great comedy. I should say very clever comedy.
Is that high comedy?
It's the highest comedy you can possibly get because it's about ping pong. But there's a great.
What's the funniest sport? Is it ping pong?
What's the funniest sport?
Yeah,
curling. Curling is by far the funniest sport ever made.
I had a delightful love affair with curling when I was living. That's another story for another day.
Story for another day.
Yeah.
End of the Topher Grace movie, the dad goes. He was like, "What?" Topher Grace says, "What am I supposed to do? What do you want me to do?" And he goes, "I don't care what you do. Just do something. It doesn't matter if it's wrong. It doesn't matter if it's right. Just do something." And sometimes people feel like that. Like sometimes you feel like people have inaction for a lot of reasons. People don't try things for a lot of reasons. But most of it's fear. Most of it's fear of the consequences of good and bad. What will happen? What will take you out of the now? And the now is okay. The now I know. The now I can control to some degree. But what happens when I move away from the now? That's really scary. But when you have those moments where you're thinking, should I do something? Or shouldn't I do something? Generally, do it.
Okay.
Unless it's something that's going to hurt someone or wind you up in jail, and that someone could be you also. Don't do like crazy stuff. But if you're thinking like, hey, I think I want to try this thing, and you're in your 20s, try it, do it, fuck it, why not? Because it just gets harder to do that as you go.
Why is that?
Because you have more at stake later in life. You have a wife, you have children, you have a mortgage, you have responsibilities. Like once you bring kids into the world, they are your responsibility. They are your number one priority. All right. You don't get to go make the movie you wanted to make, or work on the dream project, whatever that is, anymore, unless you can figure out a way to make the kids like get the kids are good. They have to be good first, right? And I see this a lot when. Sorry, I'm spitting on you.
You're not spitting on me at all. Well,
I-
you are, but it's I feel baptized.
Good, thank you. Yeah, you've been baptized in the Church of Nick. So it gets harder. And that's why I think your 20s are very important. And that's why I think you need to be less risk averse in your 20s and just take the ride. And so, my wife gave me the courage to try to at least step up and be a man.
Okay.
And she gave me the courage to at least step up and be a small business owner. And recently she's given me the courage to overcome claustrophobia, which is another thing that she's helped me.
Claustrophobia?
Yeah, I've been very claustrophobic I was at least very claustrophobic, I should say, for a number of years. And I didn't know why. And it turns out it was because, well, I don't know if this is necessarily the case, but it was triggered most when I would do jiu-jitsu. I don't know if you're familiar with jiu-jitsu or not.
I am familiar with jiu-jitsu.
So I used to do jiu-jitsu back in the day. I tried it with a roommate of mine, but discovered very quickly that I don't like. I had panic attacks when I was on my back.
What forms did you study, like Aikijitsu or
no, this was
Brazilian,
specifically Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, okay. Yeah. So I had a roommate that moved in with me that would practice against me, and I would start to dread it more and more because every time I'd get in mount or in side control, any position that was not a non-dominant position, I would panic. I would have panic attacks and push away and have to tap and move. I literally got to a point where I had to walk outside.
Now, for someone that's never had a panic attack, can you describe that? I've
Sure.
Yeah.
Your heart starts beating uncontrollably. Your brain starts pumping high doses of cortisol, which is I believe that's the word for it, the fight or flight hormone into your body. And every ounce of your being says, get out, get the fuck out of here.
And this all happens in like a second.
Happens in about a second, right?
Yeah.
And you sometimes are okay. You'll be able to breathe through it and you'll be fine. But sometimes it happens on a plane and you're like, I can't get out. So what do I do? I had problems in elevators where I'd have to stand next to the door in case more people piled in, so I could feel like I was the first person to get out. Yep. Couldn't ride in the middle seat of cars. In the back seat, couldn't do it. And by the way, the far back seat was like, go get fucked. I'm not going back there. I'll walk.
And for somebody who's never experienced this, I imagine this. Well, why? Somebody may say, just get over it, or but this is not a reaction that you just sit there and have cognitive control over in the moment very easily.
It's not. But what you have to do is, and again, going back to my wife as being a strong impetus of change in my life, an inspiration for change in my life. She was like, I was started watching more. Like I had shied away from anything that had to do with jiu-jitsu for a very long time, including UFC, MMA, things like that. So when I was at IGN, I used to go watch UFC fights. But I'd always feel kind of like there was something missing in my life because I had this sort of passion for this thing that I couldn't do anymore because my body would just literally betray me every time I do it. And so when I formed the business, I had a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear and a lot of anger that would manifest itself because like this studio alone almost broke me mentally. It was a lot of work. And my wife's like, you need something in your life that you can go to that's just you. No one else is there. And like that you can just have as a hobby and maybe that thing needs to be you using a physicality against something else to get all that aggression out.
So you went back to jiu-jitsu.
So I was like, well, I thought about Muay Thai, which is kickboxing. Right. And I'm like, I really wanted to try that.
It's more separated. You're not as many grapples.
Right. You're clinching, but you're not going to the ground. Right. I thought about judo, and I'm like, there's a little bit of groundwork there, so I don't know what I want to do. And then eventually I was like, what am I doing to myself? I'm trying to get all these other options for to avoid the thing that I really want to do, which is invest some time and energy into trying to get good at not freaking out in jiu-jitsu. And so through a chain of events, my wife's like, there are people that can help you with that. Like I can't because she couldn't because she's not a professional, but she's like, I bet there's people that you can like go to, like sports psychologists, people who can help you with phobias. And I'm like, okay. And then of course the first thing that pops in my mind is I'm like, I'm a man. I don't need any help in that regard. Like I can get over this myself. But then I thought about going so I would drive past the jiu-jitsu school. And I would start to panic. I'm like, no, I need help. I need help.
You would panic just driving by.
I would just see it and be like thinking about going inside and thinking about what happens in there. I would be like, oh shit, I can't do this. I can't do this.
I suffer from anxiety attacks. I know a little bit about.
So it's very similar to anxiety attacks, right? I think that when you get, it's just, it sucks. It sucks to think that your body can betray you like that. Your brain can betray you like that. But you can get over it. Maybe not forever. Maybe not always. But you can reach a a part of that's acceptable.
For many people, with help, the situation can improve.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And so I sought the help of a cognitive behavioral therapist
Mm-hmm.
who was very talented and was able to just sort of work with me and get me through that process. And it's one of those things where I'm not 100% perfect yet,
Mm-hmm.
but I did a class last night. I've been doing classes for the last 8 months.
Oh, that's great.
Every once in a while, if I'm, especially now, most of the time I just have an issue when if I'm wrestling against someone big or than me, or rolling with someone bigger than me, and they have, they put a lot of weight and strong pressure. Like there's guys that really know how to use their weight properly. It feels like you're being smashed by a tank. That'll freak me out every once in a while, especially if I'm exacerbated.
Sure.
But
well, it's not like it magically goes away. This is something you worked hard at.
This is something I worked really hard at, and there was something that I had to share with people, and that was the other thing too, which was, it's one of those things where you always think you have a problem that no one else has, and so you want to keep it secret because you don't want people to think that you're a weirdo or you have some sort of deficiency, especially as a man in today's culture. You don't want this guy's got a problem. He's not tough enough. He's not macho enough. But then you start talking to people about these things, and it turns out one of my instructors, who was kind enough to give me a very good break on private lessons, was like, "Oh yeah," he's like, "Now that you mention that, I used to freak out when people would grab my legs." And I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, for the first year, I would just freak out and push away when people grab my legs because he's like, I just felt like they were trapping me." And he goes, "Of course, then you realize there are ways to get in and out of that, and you get better at that, and sometimes that's just the nature of the game." But one of the things that I've grown to love about jiu-jitsu, and it's very much a metaphor for my life, is that there are just certain situations that you can capitalize off of, certain situations that you're not going to be in a good place, and sometimes you can get out of those, but sometimes you can't. Sometimes you just have to be really comfortable being uncomfortable. And it's an experience that I have at least once every time I walk through the doors.
I like that. I like what you just said. That's fantastic. And it was your wife that pushed you toward this?
She was. And she was, it was very nice of her. And she was the one, she went with me to get my first gi, which is the, you'll know it more as the kimono that you wear when you go, when you roll. And she was the one that was like, "Look, just take it at your own pace." And I was like, so I have her to thank for that in part. And a lot of other people to thank for it in part. But
sounds like you have a lot to thank her for. It's extraordinary. I really appreciate the fact that you were willing to come in here and talk about someone you're thankful for, and to talk about the messiness that's around being thankful for somebody that you love, because that is a big part of it. Some of the stories you're telling me here, man, these are familiar. And
that's what's, again, going back to talking about things, and that's why I love to share this stuff, because before I was like, I don't know how much I want to share. I live a very public life, obviously, with kind of funny. But the more and more I talked about it, the more and more people would reach out and go, "Oh yeah, I know how you're feeling." Like a perfect example is I'm a huge fan of Joe Rogan's podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, and he has a recurring guest on named Joey Diaz. Joey Diaz just got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and the other day, for the first time, I've listened to hours these guys talk, like hundreds of hours these guys talk, and Joey Diaz is like, "Yada yada yada, dog, like I used to roll yada yada yada, and dude, I finally got over those panic attacks that I used to have every time I was on my back," and I'm like, "No shit." The same thing happened, and he's a blue belt now, which is good. I'm like, so that there's so many things you can learn from an experience like this, and that's why I wanted to share it. Not the least of which is, and I know we're running long.
No, don't worry about it. It's okay.
Is that I think the biggest gains that you'll get in life are the ones that you don't see happening. I think they're the ones that take the longest to get, and I think they're the ones that you just put the time in every day, and then you look back and go, "Holy crap, look at how much I've progressed." Right? We're taught by movies and by everything, and by even games to some extent, that it's like, actually games are a little better, because if you put 60 hours in anything, you're probably going to get pretty good at it. But with movies, we're taught that everything's supposed to be...
You've obviously never watched me try to play Puyo Puyo.
Well, I don't even know what Puyo Puyo is, but you should watch me play Zelda later. It's pretty terrible. But yeah, we're taught by movies and by mainstream media that like everything's supposed to get resolved in an hour or two. Like maybe 3 if it's a Godfather movie, or 9 if it's a Lord of the Rings trilogy. But that's not the case. And more often than not, you're never going to have that one aha moment where you're like, "I'm finally over this phobia." You're just going to put the work in and look back and say, "I'm better than I was 6 months ago."
You just described a 10, 12-year arc of your life. And in that entire story, there was one aha moment, and it came on the knife's edge of a catalyst with a note you're holding in your hand.
Yeah.
And that one was not something that just came out of nowhere. It was literally the culmination of months and months of building.
Oh, yeah.
There aren't a lot of those aha moments.
No,
right.
I know.
There's a guy named Fred Craddock I love. He's a minister who said that, and whether you're a person of faith or not, I think this metaphor applies philosophically. He said there are a lot of people out there, he believes, who are willing to give their lives for what God needs. He said, there are people out there that are willing to throw down that $1,000 bill of everything and say, right here at this moment, I'm here, I can do the right thing. Mm-hmm. And he said that in his experience, what God usually does is cash in the $1,000 for quarters, hand you a giant bag back, and then say, okay, you just spend the rest of your life giving these away one at a time, day by day. One task, one little thing, one little kindness, one little goodness, one little lesson at a time. That's how it is for most of us. We never get that dramatic moment.
But yeah, every once in a while you're tested, right? Every once in a while you get that, but that dramatic moment it doesn't come out of nowhere. No. The dramatic moment is the buildup of, like, one of the happiest days of my life was January 5th of 2 years ago, 2015, when we left IGN and formed Kind of Funny officially, and told everyone we're striking out on our own in a very subtle way. We told everyone.
Very subtle.
Super subtle.
I barely noticed.
Lots of people barely noticed. They're like, you're still there, right?
All I remember.
You do what you got to do at the time. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that was a great moment, but that was a moment that that didn't come out of a void. Yeah. That came out of months of me talking with my wife and my friends and the people that I think are that I hold close to me as my advisors. And that's what's so important about, being married and having someone in your life that's like that, or at least having a strong group of friends around you. Your friends are, and your loved ones are the people that you're supposed to be able to rely on, not just when things are going well, but when things are going badly, when you need them most. And they're supposed to enrich your life, and you're supposed to do that for them. It's a two-way street. Yeah. A lot of people when you're young, you have, I don't want to say, going back to the Fight Club reference, like it was single serving friends.
Yeah.
But you do have that a lot, and so you need to make sure that you have people that are ride or die by your side, because I always talk about I quit smoking and I lost a lot of friends because of that, because we were all held together by that one common vice, and once that went away, it was like I don't really have that much to talk to you about anymore. Of course, there are quite a few people that quit smoking with me, and they were like, hey, we can talk about quit smoking. Yeah. But when you choose people to be in your life, and I'm not talking about family, because you don't choose family, for better or for worse. When you choose to marry someone, or you choose to be in that person's life and have them in your life, you need to make sure that person is in it to win it for the long haul, and that person is going to make you a better person, or at least make you want to be a better person every day.
And your wife does.
She does.
Thank you for telling us about this person you're thankful for.
My pleasure.
Nick, and thank you for telling part of your story as a part of it. This is extraordinary. I'm going to take a second here. We're going to do that hard left turn we do kind of in the middle of the show, where we take a second to move to Instant Noodles. But before that, some folks to thank. I'd like to thank our Patreon producers, Nick Rie and Robert Nieder, whose generous support makes this show possible, and all of you who give on Patreon and subscribe on YouTube and on iTunes, and who listen and who write into mail at pocketsfullofsoup.com, and who join the Pockets Full of Soup Facebook group at all, etc. You guys know the drill by now. But hey, if you can drop us $1 or $5 or $10 or $1 million if you're rich and eccentric, we will gladly accept it, because it keeps us on the air and really, really helps. So thank you for that, and thank you for all you've already done for us. Everyone who listens, everyone who writes in to support, all the kind notes mean a lot. Now, shifting gears, yes. Instant Noodles. We're going to ask a couple of questions that folks wrote in with here. From Dylan Blight. If you could be any kind of waste paper disposal unit, what would it be?
Ooh, oh man, a waste paper disposal unit. Waste paper disposal. Isn't there only one kind of waste paper disposal unit?
I don't know. Dylan writes them. I just report them.
Fair enough. Disposal unit. If I could be any type of waste paper, I'm going to just answer that question the way I want to answer it. I'd want to be one of those wet wipes, because I feel like if you're going to get thrown out, you might as well be like fun to use before you get thrown out. Like no one's ever wiped their butt with a wet wipe and thought, this is an unpleasant experience. It just feels good. It feels like rain right on your most sensitive part.
Okay, I'm immediately going to refute your answer by saying that I've had to do that a couple of times, and it really bothers me.
Really?
Yeah.
Let me go you one further then. And here's why that bothers you. Because you lived in Japan. And you know what they have in Japan? Bidets.
They do.
And the bidet is an unfortunate casualty of the American Revolution.
Yeah.
I feel like, well, actually, they didn't have toilets back then, but they didn't have running water either. But I feel like the bidet is the one thing we didn't adopt from European culture, and it sucks. And every time I go to London or Germany or anywhere in Europe, and I'm going to Copenhagen this year with my wife, I'll get totally naked just to take a poop, just so I can just get in that bidet.
The bidet is kind of amazing. Oh, it's an extraordinary experience. If you've never felt the sublime tickle of the Wow, I can't even say it right.
The
The
bidet.
bidet. My apologies. Now I'm just like doing the Paul Hogan in Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah.
Just like the
bidet, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry. That's terrible.
That was marvelous.
That was a terrible
Well
joke.
dad joked. Well dad joked indeed. Saul in Alaska asks, red pill or blue pill?
Which one was the one that gets you out of the Matrix?
I don't remember.
I'll take that.
I think the blue pill gets you out. The
I
red
like that
pill
one.
gets
That
you
was more of a challenge.
Yeah.
Because red pill, let's be honest, Neo's life sucked.
You didn't want to eat like the what was that stuff? Kind of like cream of wheat and live on the big pipe spaceship.
No, I didn't mind that part. I wouldn't want to stay in the fantasy land of the Matrix because
like in the rave cave.
yeah, no, the rave cave was dope. I'm saying I'd get out of the Matrix, go to the rave cave, do all those like dirty people. And by do I mean have sex with all those dirty people, like have that big orgy.
Oh, the red pill.
I'd
Okay.
want to be that. Yeah, I want the red pill.
Okay,
I don't want to
misunderstood.
stay in the Matrix. I don't want to
All
stay hidden
misunderstood
to
you.
the reality.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
Because Neo's life pre getting out of the Matrix didn't look that fun anyway. He worked in a fucking office, wore a drab black suit. He was definitely not getting into that sweet Trinity.
What's your driving force work-wise? What motivates you to be the best you can be?
The people around me. Got Tim and Greg and Kevin and Colin and all the people that we've worked with are exceptional in their own right, and they make me literally feel every day like I am a child going to my dad's office, and so I try harder and harder every day. Except for today, in which case, and when I took I took a few hours off, obviously to take a little bit of break because it's been a crazy couple weeks, and I ate almost all of Greg's peanut butter.
Oh,
Greg, I ate some peanut
how
butter.
much peanut butter was there?
It was probably there's a good 5 tablespoons, and I ate 3.
I've lost a lot of weight recently, and I attribute at least 40% of that to not eating full jars of peanut butter anymore.
That's smart to do. A lot of sugar in peanut butter.
Yep. It's delicious.
It is delicious.
Really, really bad for you.
It's not great for you.
Yeah.
But I just went to the gym.
Especially by the jar.
I needed protein. Well, nothing by the jar is good for you unless you're talking about baby food.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Pickles, maybe? No, too much salt.
They're so good though.
They are.
Although
Pickles are
a lot of
delicious.
people talk about the pickling process being good for your gut biome.
Oh, I didn't know that. Really?
Yeah. Apparently, I guess I don't know if it's pickles, but I know for sure like kimchi. Apparently, it's supposed to be very good for your
Good for
stomach.
your guts. I didn't know that.
Kind of cleans out all the bad bacteria
That's
and
nice to know.
fosters the good bacteria.
Seinfeld or Friends?
Oh, Seinfeld. That's not.
Yeah.
Does anyone answer Friends to that question?
I don't know. I don't ask a question
Oh
normally.
my god!
That's
If you answer Friend to that
that's
question,
from-
if your
ask
first
Nate
thought in your
Fletcher.
brain when you heard this was Friends, you're a fucking monster. Okay. Although recently I talked so much shit about Friends, and I'm like, dude, that show does not fucking hold up. And I turned it on the other day, and I'm like, this is the stupidest show ever. And then 3 episodes later, I'm like, fuck, I gotta stop watching this show.
Yeah,
it's
you
like
can't
crack.
stop watching Friends.
It's so good.
I can't pretend not to like Friends. I love it. No. Phil Spiderman is the best joke in the history of television.
God, it's so good.
Phil Spiderman is the best joke ever on TV.
It's true.
It's so
hard, it's
dumb.
hard to refute.
It's a really wonderful joke.
Yeah.
What's the best state that isn't California?
Southern California.
Southern California.
Because I would say that I would argue that Northern and Southern California are 2 wholly different places.
What about the free state of Jefferson?
I don't know about the free state of Jefferson.
Oh, that's the state north of. That's Northern California that wants to break off and be the 51st state.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
They know about the Jefferson movement?
I did not know about the Jefferson.
Oh
movement.
yeah, folks north of a little. You get up or a little north of like Napa, and there's a big group of people that want to break off from California and have self-government.
You know, we could try that, but let's just be perfectly honest, folks. We'd fuck it up too. The United States, we had the best shot we had about 250 years ago, and we've corrupted the shit out of that.
What was your favorite part of working at Greg and Colin's house in the early Kind of Funny days?
Oh, I loved the first day that I went there, and I loved actually pretty much every day subsequent until we got the studio, because I had worked in a corporation, in a corporate office for so long, and I had desperately wanted to change, and there's no bigger change than working with a company that has vending machines and resources and all sorts of fun, cool, eclectic people around you, to then going to your buddy's house. And it felt every day, like every day I got to work, I'm like, it felt like the day where you're like, I'm not going to go to work today. I'm going to stay home and just fuck around and like pretend like I'm working, but like tell everyone I'm working from home. But in reality, I'm just so it felt like I was working from home every day. And that was really fun. Plus Portillo.
Oh yeah, Portillo's a delight.
Come on. He's lovely.
Big fan of
And then Lola joined the family as well. And
no.
Lola's gorgeous.
What would you do? I would never want to make you choose, but I'm absolutely going to. If you had to live in a world where there was a fire and you could only rescue Lola or Portillo.
Don't make me choose between those. I can't choose between those.
You can't choose.
Is there a third option where I throw Kevin into that fire?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, then Kevin's going
All
in
right,
the fire.
that works.
Not to kill him, because I feel like Kevin burns himself on like probably a daily thing, so he'd be fine. I just throw him in there.
Somebody wants to know what your favorite foreign or independent film is.
Foreign or independent film? Jeez Louise, I got a lot of favorite independent films. I don't know if this counts as an indie film, but my favorite in recent years was Drive.
Oh.
It was the Ryan Gosling film, Nicholas Winding Refn. That movie, for whatever reason, just ticked off all the boxes for me. I'm like, it was an art film. It was fucking surreal. It had Ryan Gosling, which once you have Ryan Gosling in your film, I'm like, dude, I'm in. It had Oscar Isaacs in it, and not a lot of people remember him in it, but he had a bit role in it. He played the husband of the girl down the hall. That's
right.
That Ryan Gosling loved.
Oh my gosh.
And that was Oscar Isaacs pre him being, Ex Machina and Star Wars fame.
Right.
And it was a movie that was very polarizing, and I like polarizing things.
Okay. Where did you fall on the polarizing scale?
As far as whether I liked it or not?
No, just I don't know what made it polarizing.
Oh, it was super violent. It was very much, when I heard I read an interview with Nicholas Winding Refn talking about what inspired him to make that movie, and he doesn't. I guess he doesn't drive actually, but he was driving around L.A. I think maybe he was being driven around L.A. and listening to music, and he was like, I just want to write a movie about this, about like what it's like to drive at night and listen to music, and that's the inspiration that Drive.
So when you say polarizing, you mean critically polarizing, or do you mean polarizing into okay?
Oh, I meant polarizing as far as people's reaction to it.
I wasn't quite sure what you meant by that. Okay, now I understand.
Yeah. Like a lot of people hated that movie.
Okay, so that's
and a lot of people. It's in their top independent movies of all time list. So
when you drive around at night, what do you listen to?
Recently I've been listening to a lot of Huey Lewis in the News, and a lot of I listen to a very eclectic bunch of music. Like on the gym today, I was listening to Nas, and then when I go home tonight, I'll probably listen to Celine Dion or Adele.
Where do you fall in the Huey Lewis scene, Patrick Bateman scene from American Psycho?
Oh, it's arguably one of the best scenes ever made. Ever.
Really?
On a film.
Wow.
Where he's talking about when he has that amazing monologue about Huey Lewis in the News.
Yeah, well, he's getting ready to kill the guy.
Yeah, it's fucking awesome.
Okay,
that movie's great.
Where do we fall on that?
Yeah. I mean, where do you come down? I was gonna say I didn't read the book, but the movie is my only touchstone to that. And I love it because I love that it's just one big analogy of how Europe sees us.
The movie and the book are very different, but I've read the book. I've watched the movie. They both have brilliant moments in them, but I honestly think I prefer the film.
Really?
Yeah, and I've heard a lot. I know that's probably not a popular opinion. But
I don't know. I love the film. I think it's great.
There's a pretty amazing sequence in the book where he goes to a U2 concert and he locks eyes with Bono. Bono's off in the stage performing, and he and Bono have a psychic transferal where they have this mystical conversation together while he's standing in the crowd looking into Bono's eyes. That I wish that had been.
That's
in the
amazing.
Movie.
That's amazing.
But everything else in the movie I think is fascinating. It's a polarizing film. But
yeah, definitely.
But I like it a lot. What's the best song written in the last 100 years?
The best song written in the last 100 years, Stairway to Heaven, Led Zeppelin.
I think you were the first Stairway we've gotten.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's a masterpiece.
Maybe everybody else saw the sign that said no stairway. And
I saw
Wayne out of the store.
Well, you didn't ask me what one of the best movies ever made was, which is definitely Wayne's World. Apparently that sign's a real thing, by the way.
Really? In the store?
I forget where it came from, but I guess maybe I was reading IMDb trivia. I read a lot of IMDb trivia when I watch movies. It's my favorite thing to do. My favorite second screen experience.
Good plan.
And I think I was reading about that on the Wayne's World IMDb trivia, that it was actually a sign they had seen.
Oh, and so they decided.
To use that because it's hilarious. Because people got so annoyed that was the one song everyone. Boom, doom, 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 doom.
But there's a reason.
Well, yeah, but they were like. I think the criticism was that you didn't play the whole song. They only knew that first. Yeah. So every day in and out, someone would pick up the Fender and they play those first few bars, and it would just drive people nuts. So I understand there's a need for no Stairway, but I have a definite Stairway policy in my life.
I love Stairway. I think my favorite Zeppelin song is Over the Hills and Far Away.
Oh, okay.
I love that song.
Now, are you a big Tolkien fan?
Oh yeah.
So do you get most of the references in the?
They go kind of druidic too. It's not just tokeny. I mean, they go off to some pretty weird spots.
Oh, okay.
So, but
that explains why I don't understand any of it. Because I'll be honest with you right now. I come from marching band world where I don't deal in worlds of lyrics. So when I listen to songs, when I hear music, I don't hear lyrics ever. I just hear beats. It's very crazy. Unless I've memorized the words and I'm singing along. But even then, the meaning of the words doesn't resonate. It's just the cadence of the words.
It's just the cadence and the sound.
Right.
Okay. So you're like Bela Lugosi speaking English in his early movies.
Exactly. Or Arnold Schwarzenegger speaking English in his early movies.
Yeah.
So I don't. So I've tried to dissect the lyrics of Led Zeppelin's "Stairway to Heaven" and a lot of the other Led Zeppelin songs, and it doesn't make any sense to me. It still has. I still have no idea. I've looked it up, and everyone's like, we don't know either. So I don't feel too bad.
I think people go to Lord of the Rings, but there's some other stuff that's really kind of more druidy, hippy dippy, witchy woman type stuff, and or witchy man in that case.
Yeah.
What's your favorite word?
Yes.
Oh, like that. What's the first word you think of when you hear the sound of your own voice?
Ugh. Is that a word? Or is that just onomatopoeia?
Totally. That's it. Yeah, it's an excellent word.
Yeah.
What's the most terrifying creature in the natural world?
The most terrifying creature in the natural world. I just saw a Facebook video of some slug that spits out like a trail and then sucks it back into him.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't need to know about that.
That was pretty terrifying.
I did not need to know.
That's the kind of thing that looks like a creature that you find in hell. Yeah.
Sir.
I mean, I'll find it for you for later. If you want.
Panda did an animated episode for us where he created an 8-legged spider shark.
Oh, that's terrifying.
It's pretty amazing.
Panda's a very talented man. He should use those for evil more often.
Yeah, I like to use this stuff for evil. And then I think we're going to wrap up with this one. All our guests get this. Cake or pie?
Oh, son of a bitch. That's a Sophie's choice.
Yep, cake or pie.
We're going pie. I gotta go pie. Yeah. Unless you're talking cupcakes, that's a harder story. But I'm as far as slices of cakes versus pie, there's just so many more varietals of pie that work for me. They hit on all levels. Pumpkin pie being probably the king of all pies.
Ooh, pumpkin pie is your favorite. Okay.
Oh yeah.
What do you think of the Garrison Keillor quote where he says that the best pumpkin pie you ever had was not that much better than the worst pumpkin pie you ever had?
I would agree with that.
Okay.
I would definitely agree with that.
What about the other Garrison Keillor quote where he says pumpkin pie is mostly an excuse to eat nutmeg?
Oh. Yeah, sure. Okay.
Yeah, I'm paraphrasing him, but I think, okay, cool.
I appreciate that.
Excellent. All right, so there we are.
Now I'm rethinking that, by the way. I know we're wrapping up, but I do love, I'm going to go with pie just because there's more options there for me that I like, because cake all pretty much tastes the same, but the red velvet cake at Susie Cakes down on Chestnut is arguably one of the best things I've ever had in my life.
You introduced me to this. I was over here for, I think it was when you guys opened this place and you had them brought in.
Oh, yeah, I had cupcakes.
Yeah, you had the cupcakes, and you're like, you have to eat the red velvet. And
what did you think?
It was sublime.
Good.
It was just as good as you're saying, if not better. Wow, I'd forgotten about just how good. Now I want that. Is that near here? Can we
no, it's not anywhere. They're closed by now. But next time I see you, I'll bring you one.
Nick, thank you for coming on. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I really appreciate you making time for the show.
That's fun.
Anything you want to plug? I mean, the fact of the matter is, I imagine that 95% of my audience came over from your audience.
Potentially, but you've been doing this for a while, and you'd be surprised. Because good products tend to find good people. And I think this is a really good podcast. I'm not just saying that because I'm on it. No, if you're not familiar with me, you can follow me on Twitter at Nick_Scarpino. If you want to see more shenanigans at this table, you can go to youtube.com/kindafunny. Or if you're into games, you're not going to see me there much, but you can see my other cohorts at youtube.com/kindafunnygames, where you can see all sorts of fun Let's Plays and reacts and all sorts of good stuff.
Delightful, fun things to do. Thank you so much for coming on. And guys, thank you for watching and listening. It means the world. Look forward to showing you some other neat stuff later this month. Until then, hey, join the Facebook group. It's free, and we have a lot of fun over there. We just named my Venus flytrap. It was fun.
What's it called?
In the end, we went with Jeff Goldblum.
Oh, great.
Because it's a fly/bloom double entendre.
I like that.
Yeah, it's both blooms and the fly.
How many people?
Cronenberg in there.
How many people do you think have named their Venus flytrap Tui? Are you familiar with that from Little Shop of Horrors?
Yeah, I got so many Little Shop of Horrors like submissions. Have you ever watched the alternate ending to Little Shop of Horrors? Oh, Nick, you're gonna die.
What happens?
They filmed this multi-million-dollar effects ending.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, I'm not making this. They decided not to use it because they decided it didn't really fit the feel. It's right when Seymour's about to try to shoot Audrey. But instead of things ending happily, Audrey eats Seymour.
Okay.
And then takes over the world.
Oh.
And it's like giant puppet Audreys going through the city, destroying buildings Godzilla style, with like people fighting them, and in the end, like them climbing up the Statue of Liberty. These beautiful puppets. I only discovered this recently too.
This is awesome.
I believe it was through the
I'm going to come watch this.
It's on YouTube.
Okay.
But I think the Laser Time podcast, who do amazing stuff, pointed this out, and I was just like, "Wow,
that's awesome."
Yeah, you're going to like this.
I can imagine them not going with that editing for a lot of reasons.
Yeah,
but that's cool.
They didn't go with it, but they filmed it, and it's out there.
That's awesome.
It's pretty rad. So, all right, guys, thank you so much. Man-eating plants and all aside. See you next time. Be good to one another. Bye bye.